The Democrats' prospects are crashing because of Ebola, because of Obamacare, because of ISIS, because of a lot of things. The ratings for the Democrat Party, the ratings for the president are hitting lows that they haven't seen in a long time. And it seems like there may be a political landslide coming up. So we'll tell you about that. And we've also got our dear friend, country star Ricky Skaggs. He was named Country Entertainer of the Year. He's gotten 16 or 17 awards. He's got all kinds of #1 records. And his wife, Sharon White, whose family was singing on the show, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And that was a big break for them. And we've also got America's funniest psychologist, Kevin Lehman. And we've got all that. But a sad note, the world, according to one expert, has just 60 days to bring the Ebola outbreak under control. That's the warning from the United Nations.
The UN says there could be 10,000 new cases of the killer virus every week within 2 months. And here in the United States, new questions are being raised about the government's handling of this deadly disease. Ephraim Graham has the story.
We are monitoring, supervising, overseeing in a much more aggressive way exactly what's taking place in Dallas initially, and making sure that the lessons learned are then transmitted to hospitals and clinics all across the country.
The president is now ordering the Centers for Disease Control to deploy medical SWAT teams within 24 hours to any hospital reporting a new case of Ebola. His orders come as Amber Joy Vincent, the second Dallas nurse to catch Ebola, is now in isolation at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. Amber treated the Liberian man who died at a Dallas hospital last week. She then flew to Cleveland to visit family and back to Dallas before she knew she had the disease. Vincent contacted the CDC about her travel plans, and it now admits it was a mistake to give her permission to fly with a heightened temperature of a little more than 99 degrees.
And this is making you wonder, is it safe to even, get on any of these planes going, anywhere?
The CDC says the risk to the 132 passengers is extremely low, but air travelers are still uneasy and the country is nervous. An ABC News Washington Post poll showed 65% of Americans are concerned about an epidemic, and a growing number of lawmakers are calling for the president to institute a travel ban to and from West Africa. House Speaker John Boehner said a temporary ban on travel to the United States from countries afflicted with the virus is something the president should consider. Today on Capitol Hill, a senior executive from the Dallas hospital where the Ebola patient Eric Thomas Duncan died is apologizing for mistakes. Now, people are also asking questions about this. The man directing the air transfer of the second Dallas nurse is standing on the tarmac without protective clothing. Meanwhile, the UN warns the world has 60 days to stop Ebola, or it will face an unprecedented situation, with the number of cases climbing as high as 10,000 per week, and the death rate now stands at 70%. On top of that, the UN World Food Program says if the Ebola outbreak continues to grow in the coming months, it could also cause a major food crisis. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Thanks, Ephraim. Ladies and gentlemen, the thing we've got to remember is we cannot allow political correctness to dominate the way we treat this thing. You can't say, well, it's unkind or racially insensitive not to allow people from these infected countries to come to the United States. They don't have any right to come to the United States, and we shouldn't open our doors to receive them. It's just one of those things that's got to be recognized, that they carry this virus, and it's pretty deadly. Now, I was in Zaire when this first big Ebola outbreak took place. I was in Kinshasa, the capital. We were sending supplies to a place called Kikwit where there was an outbreak. But it was contained, and it died down after a while. This thing seems to have taken on a life beyond itself, but we don't need to panic. That is not smart. Nor do we need to elevate political correctness above our normal health procedures. We've got to recognize we have to deal with this thing as a virus. It has nothing to do with their race, their color, their country of origin, their sexual orientation, or any of that other stuff. It has to do with stopping a virus from killing our people. And that's got to be done at the highest level of our government. Well, in other news, the Pentagon says it has killed hundreds of ISIS fighters with airstrikes around the key city of Kobani. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
And Pat, the U.S. says the airstrikes in and around Kobani have stiffened the resolve of the city's Kurdish defenders. According to the Pentagon, the U.S. launched 39 strikes in 2 days. Military leaders believe only hundreds of civilians are left in the town now. Everyone else is evacuated, while hundreds of ISIS fighters are moving in. The Pentagon says one reason the U.S. is bombing the Syrian city more is because of the increased presence of ISIS targets there now. And while it's hard to give an exact number, the Pentagon believes the campaign has killed several hundred ISIS fighters. But it also says the group could still capture Kobani, which is seen as an important target for them. And coming up, we'll have Pat's exclusive interview with a senior advisor to the president of Kurdistan. Pat?
Well, I think you'll find that very interesting, what the Kurds are saying about this whole matter. And I'm so grieved at the fact that, once again, they're begging for equipment, begging the Turks for the equipment. The Turks won't give it to them. They sit across the border and just watch. The United States is saying, oh, well, we have to give our goods to the central authority in Baghdad, and then if they see fit to give it to you, that's fine. But these people are in the midst of a pitched battle with butchers, and they're saying, give us the tools and we'll win. And we don't do it. That's why people are getting so upset with our president. They're not doing the right thing. And we watch Kobani and we look at the particular massacre and we're saying, how could we possibly stand idly by and say, well, we'll take it from the air. We'll fight this thing at 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet, wherever those planes are flying. It won't work. John?
Pat, and speaking about the battle against ISIS and other political problems, they're taking their toll on President Obama and Democrats before the upcoming midterm elections. And in turn, they're helping Republicans who are taking a strong position on national security. President Obama's job approval rating stands at 40% in a new Washington Post ABC News poll, his lowest ever in that survey. And the Democratic Party is facing its weakest popularity in polling going back 30 years. Republicans are even less popular, but more Republican voters are likely to turn out next month. 50% of likely voters say they will vote Republican for House seats, and only 43% will vote Democratic. The mayor of Houston has backed off somewhat in the legal battle with pastors there involving a gay rights ordinance. The administration of Mayor Anise Parker, a lesbian, had subpoenaed the sermons of 5 Houston pastors who oppose the city's equal rights ordinance. That law creates protections for homosexuals and transgenders. The pastors argued Parker's legal action against them violates their religious liberty and free speech rights. Now KTRH radio reports Parker says she didn't mean to ask for their sermons.
People are rightly concerned if a government entity tries to in any way inhibit religious speech. That is not the intent.
But the battle is far from over. It centers on a petition to let citizens vote on the Equal Rights Ordinance. The city rejected their petition, and voters sued. The case is going forward, and Houston officials have demanded the pastors turn over their emails, diaries, checkbooks, tape recordings, and text messages, among other forms of communication. The Parker administration's revised demands will be clarified in upcoming hearings, and CBN's David Brody will have a special report on the legal battle in Houston on tomorrow's 700 Club. Pat?
This lady ran as a moderate or whatever, and she was a lesbian, but she's kind of stayed under wraps, so to speak, and now suddenly her predilections are coming forward, and this is one of the most outrageous demands that I have ever heard in any city in the United States in our history. This is unbelievable, and this is Houston, Texas, place where the Baptists are so strong. What are the Baptists doing down there now, letting this thing go forward? It's an outrageous violation of the First Amendment freedom of those Houston pastors. and they can't permit it. They've got to stand up against it, and I might say that the American Center for Law and Justice would be only too delighted to help them in court. But they've got to stop this thing, and this woman is just has exceeded any authority of any city official that I have ever heard about in the entire history of the United States of America. Now, that's a lot, and somebody say, well, you don't remember what happened in Plymouth in, 1700, but right now, as far as I'm concerned, modern times, this is the worst I've ever heard. John?
Pat, investors are wondering just how low stocks and oil can go. Stocks had a wild ride Wednesday with the Dow plunging 460 points, then coming back. Then they headed for more selling today. Some analysts say this is the new correction many investors have been expecting for months. And they point out that October is often a very difficult month for stocks, but November and December are usually good months. And oil has hit the key level of $80. That means lower prices at the gas pump, but it also means less income for some American oil producers and key oil countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. Pat, what's your take on all of this?
Well, the Saudis are determined to maintain their share of the oil industry, and they're going to let the prices go down. This is going to be devastating to Putin, who depends on oil revenue to prop up his flagging economy. There's sanctions coming against the Russians on every side, and now this is going to be a major blow. But I'll say this, the people who are doing all this fracking is very expensive. It takes 1 million gallons of water, maybe barrels of water. It takes 1,400,000 pounds of sand or more. One well could cost $7, $8, $9, $10, $11, $12 million. And if oil drops below $80 a barrel, that stuff is going to stop. Now, some of the big boys will keep on going because they've got plenty of money and they want to, maintain their rigs and their crews. But there'll be a lot of idle rigs, and a lot of people just cannot afford to. It makes money at $80. Below 80, it starts losing. So you'll find that so-called oil glut will vanish very quickly. But geopolitically, it's going to be a blow to Putin. The Saudis, I don't know what their game is, but they'll take low prices in order to drive other people out and to maintain their dominance. You've got Libyan oil coming on, you've got Iraqi oil coming on, and of course the shale oil coming out of America. And so there's a lot of oil right now. But believe me, it's flexible, and the supply will go down. As far as the stock market, myself have been feeling for some weeks that the market was going to correct. You just had that feeling, and so I sold some things and some funds I managed, and I'm sure others did the same thing who knew what was happening. But nevertheless, this is about a 10% correction. I mean, it happens all the time, so it isn't the end of the world. And usually in an election year, there's so much spending that goes on television and so forth that it boosts the economy. But the P ratios, the other ratios, had gotten way out of whack, and it was time for a correction. 10% is not the end of the world. I don't think it'll go much lower than this, and I don't think oil can go much lower than this without the whole supply shutting down.
A magistrate in North Carolina could lose his job after he refused to marry a gay couple in Elizabeth City. The Christian Science Monitor reports Gary Littleton told the couple he wouldn't perform the marriage because of his religious beliefs. The area's chief district court judge says, quote, it could be construed that he had broken the law because that is a duty that a magistrate has to perform marriages. Judge Bean says if Littleton keeps refusing to marry same-sex couples, he must resign or face removal. Hobby Lobby President Steve Green says construction is about to start on a Bible museum just off the National Mall in Washington. Green says his family has spent years putting together a collection of 44,000 biblical artifacts that will be placed in the museum. They hope to open it in the fall of 2017. He says it will be a state-of-the-art facility focusing on the contents of the Bible and its impact on America and the world. Green says to be ignorant of the Bible is to be ignorant of the church and the state. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.